How quickly things could go wrong when the day didn't start all that bad was anyone's guess. Genji was getting back into the regular workload and slowly but surely went back to practicing with the team again, much to his own delight. Aone might have seemed a bit less enthusiastic, but he managed to convince him he knew what he was doing. Which he did, of course. He didn't want to end up with those stupid crutches again either. One time was just enough. They didn't put him back into the starting lineup, but that was to be expected, and he didn't blame the coach for that decision. It was for both his and the team's good. Like this, he could at least take part in practices, and also admire his soon-to-be husband in action from the bench. And there was a lot to admire considering Aone's impressive physique. But this time, he could barely focus on anything. He slumped on the bench a mere second after they arrived at the gymnasium, feeling like all life had been drained from him. His stomach almost floated on water, so much he was scared to bend down for anything. He had no idea what was happening to his body. He was just fine in the morning, eating breakfast like always before heading to work by Aone's side. He had nowhere to get sick like this. Holding his face into his palms, he took a few deep breaths in a fruitless attempt to calm down his raging stomach. Damn this and everything that comes with it. Why now and why me? This isn't fair. Genji. He snapped his head up, his stomach rolling with the fast motion. Aone stood above him with a water bottle in his hand, concern written all over his face. Are you okay? Genji sighed and nodded, even though he was far from being okay. However, he refused to let Aone know just how sick he felt right now, knowing how worried his fiancée would get. He could deal with it on his own. It wasn't anything serious, right? Just unsettled stomach. Unfortunately, judging by Aone's expression, his lies weren't working anymore. Not since his knee got shattered. But he couldn't otherwise. He knew Aone would insist on staying at home with him to take care of him, missing more work and practices because of it. He couldn't bring himself to do that again, not after Aone took care of him for months. And so he forced a smile and gently nudged Aone's side. Of course I am. I'm just a bit tired from work, that's all. The worried crease on Aone's forehead deepened, and Genji cringed inwardly. Lying to his partner felt worse than his sick stomach, but there was no way around it. He squeezed Aone's hand in reassurance. I'm really fine, don't worry about me. You have to focus on the blocks now. It would be a shame if you got switched out, no? Genji. Seriously, don't worry. I just need a little breather and I'll join the rest of you in a minute. You focus on the practice, alright? Aone still visibly hesitated, already opening his mouth to protest, but a call from the coach interrupted him. He gave Genji one last uncertain look, but then followed the coach's request and headed to the court. Feeling his stomach already floating again, Genji clenched his jaw and focused on his breaths in an attempt to get his stomach acids under control. Just thinking about getting up from the bench made him sick, though fortunately he wouldn't have to spend long on the court. He just had to survive the initial discussion and then he was free to sit down again. Come on, damn it. You had worse than this. He gathered his remaining strength and pushed himself up, muffling a groan as his whole midsection cramped, desperately trying not to break in his waist. Still, he forced his legs to move and headed to the rest of the team, hoping the pain wasn't showing on his face too much. Judging by the worried glance Auna gave him, it didn't go well. He nodded at their coach, too busy trying not to throw up to speak, and stepped aside to stand by Auna's side. He flinched when Auna laid his hand on his forehead. You should go home. You're pale. Kenji didn't even try to smile this time. No, boo. I told you I'm fine.
But you aren't.
I am. I swear I am. You'll see when we start again, I'll get much better.
So you aren't well.
Kenji winced, inwardly cursing himself for jumping into an obvious trap. Apparently, he lost all his mental filters of his words too. He took a shattered breath, his face twisting in pain as another wave of nausea clenched his stomach in its grip. He coughed, his mouth dry, a sour taste already rising into his throat. Maybe step back a bit, it's... He didn't even manage to turn away when his stomach rolled, and with a sudden retch, he showed everyone what he ate that day. Tears entered his eyes as he gagged again and again with nothing but stomach acids to throw up anymore. Strong arms were immediately around him, rubbing soothing circles into his back and carefully guiding him away from the mess he made on the floor. He choked out a strangled sob, feeling sick and pathetic and unworthy of the gentle gesture. Sorry. Don't be, it's alright. What's wrong? Kenji whined as another edge hurled acids into his throat. It's nothing.
Kenji. Yeah, I can see that. I wanna take him to clean up and home before he gets even worse.
But...
Shush, I don't want to see your face at practice until you are okay again. Ona, I believe you'll make sure of it, right?
I will. Kenji wanted to protest further, but the burning in his throat only got worse, turning his words into a weak whine. His legs trembled when Auna helped him stand somewhat straight again, and so he just let his fiancée lead him away, barely registering the calls for bucket and mop behind him. Much to his despair, even squeezing his eyes shut didn't prevent the tears from rolling down his face. Auna's grip on his waist tightened.
You'll be alright soon.
All Kenji managed was a weak nod before his knees buckled under him and his vision went black. Light pierced his brain when he opened his eyes, sending a wave of pain through his skull. Groaning, he closed his eyes again to stop the assault on his head, the feeling like he got ran over by a herd of elephants only intensifying. Then the light suddenly disappeared, leaving the whole space in a much more pleasant dimness. He sighed softly in relief. Kenji. Surprised by the voice, he cracked his eyes open, finally taking a proper look around, or as much as his current position allowed him to. He didn't recognize a single thing, only that he was lying in a bed in a somewhat empty room, but nothing looked familiar. Even the bed felt strange, almost as cold as the walls. A large, warm hand caught his cheek, chasing the cold away. He turned his head to where the voice earlier came from, meeting the olive eyes of his fiancée that now watched him filled with concern. Oh, hey. Auna gave him a tiny smile, caressing his cheekbone with his thumb.
How do you feel?
Tired. Drained. Aona nodded, seemingly more to himself than to Kenji, and pressed a short kiss to Kenji's forehead. Sighing, Kenji relaxed under the touch, trying to kick his mind to work properly. Where?
Hospital. You fainted when we went home, and I didn't want to risk anything.
Oh, right. He got sick at practice and threw up in front of everyone, his fiancée, coach, and co-workers. And then everything got blurry. Now that Aona said it, the empty room and cold bed made more sense. He recalled staring at similar walls back when he lay in hospital with a brace on his knee. A sight he hoped he wouldn't have to see again. He laid his hand over his stomach, still feeling slight discomfort around his midsection, but definitely not as bad as in the gymnasium. Aona followed his movement with his eyes and squeezed his other hand, entwining their fingers together.
Do you feel better?
A little bit. Did they say?
The doctor said it could be food poisoning. They're still doing tests, but it shouldn't be anything dangerous. They gave you some medicine and said to keep an eye on you.
Kenji took a moment to absorb Aona's words before nodding tiredly, feeling like an absolute crap. He hesitantly raised his eyes to Aona's, worried what he might find in them. I'm sorry. Sighing, Aona gave his hand a tight squeeze.
I'm just glad you are alright. But next time, please tell me when you are this sick.
I didn't want to worry you. No, I still did, didn't I? Aona shook his head and leaned his forehead against Kenji's, peppering his cheek with feather-light kisses. Kenji giggled quietly, the familiar touches easing the tension that settled in his chest. He should have known better already after being together for so long. Stop, your stubble is itching.
You didn't complain yesterday.
Heat rushed into Kenji's cheeks with the reminder of the last night when it wasn't just his face getting tickled by Aona's stubble, which Kenji was quite sure his fiancée let grow for that exact reason. Though he really couldn't complain, nor did he want to. Apparently feeling the change in his mood, Aona chuckled and kissed him one more time before he sat back into the chair. Kenji whined at the loss of contact and tugged on their still connected hands. I want a hug. Aona gave him a soft smile and patted his hair, leaving his palm nested against his cheek.
Later, okay? When you feel better.
Disappointed, Kenji let his head fall back on the pillow. He was feeling better already. Why couldn't he get a hug? On the other hand, though, he did make Aona worried enough for one day and didn't want to live through the whole ordeal again. And so he leaned into the touch, enjoying the pleasant warmth spreading through his whole body. You promise?
I promise. And I'll make sure you get better again.
Kenji melted, his heart fluttering. Thank you.
For nothing. I'll go call the nurse here.
Kenji followed him with his gaze while slowly relaxing, sending a quick thanks to the deity that sent Aona into his life as a friend, partner, and a future husband nonetheless. Despite his terrible personality, he really got incredibly lucky in his life.